Welcome to the study again, and to the last of this short series of perspectives on the prologue of John chapter 1. I hope you found that it's actually helped you to understand not only those verses we've looked at, but how the rest of John pans out as a gospel. What it shows comes from those foundations of those first few verses. So we're looking at a church in the first century. We're looking at church facing all kinds of challenges, not least an idea that somehow the world could replace God, that somehow there are different ways of finding a good life. Philosophically, there were all kinds of ideas. And people, like today, want a good life. There was a Japanese firm who put together a robot, and they called that robot Sophia. And they said it was the first step of a conscious IT life. And they produced Sophia, and they had a whole group of people there for the launch, and they asked her a different set of questions: mathematical, geographical, political, and different things. And then the sixth question came up from somebody, and the question is, what is the meaning of life? To which Sophia had no answer. In some ways, I can understand that. She isn't a sentient being. But there is something that is in us as humanity that seeks to find the answer to that question. What is the meaning of life? What is a good life? What is that which makes us full and whole and happy, despite all the circumstances? I don't think anybody would say that we're asking for a life without the challenges. We're asking for, in the midst of the challenges, how can life be something special? We don't want to be some non-sentient being like Sophia, who, yes, could answer the square root of whatever numbers and the geographical position of this, that, and the other. I want the answer to the sixth question: what is the meaning of life? And it's something very peculiar to humanity from the rest of the world in which we live, that is a meaningful question to us. It's an important question to us. I travel to work every morning, back in an evening, and I travel through Hyde Park, and many squirrels passing around. I'm not sure a squirrel has any understanding of what's happening with the world. It doesn't sit there in a branch of tree with a nut, and working out what it is that is their meaning of life. There is something about humanity that has this important question at the very center of our being. What is the meaning of life? And then we get to verse 14. The word, the logos, the thing of God that held everything together, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now it's, in the next few minutes, it's a verse bigger than we can manage in 15-20 minutes. So we're going to take just some aspects of that. So the logos, that which is the character and the identity of God, that seeks for hope, for fullness, for goodness, for the meaningfulness of life, that became flesh. It became as I am, in a world in which I live, and dwelt among us. Now, actually, in Greek, the word it uses is tabernacled amongst us. And if that was there wouldn't be many people who would understand So made his dwelling among us is an Anglicanized version of it. But tabernacled, you see, when Moses and the people of Israel left Egypt, one of the things they did once they got into a sense of their own identity and freedom was God commanded them to build a tabernacle, and the tabernacle was in the very center. And everything that the community did, everything that they were, was built around the tabernacle. And the tabernacle had very specific designs. And it reflected this idea of where God sat in the heavens. It was some kind of reflection. It was heaven on earth. And on earth, it gave you a reflection of a connection to heaven. And the tabernacle was that place where Moses and the people met with God. And God tabernacled with them, in the midst of them. And in tabernacling with them, he led them by day, he led them by night. He had a cloud of fire, he gave them manna, he gave them water, he gave them everything they needed because he was in the center of it all. He tabernacled with them, and they tabernacled with him. And when you look at the plans of the Exodus, and you look at how it was all laid out, you see the tabernacle in the very center of the community and everybody around. And the tabernacle was the center where the decisions were made, where processes were done. And the Word became flesh and tabernacled with us. That's taking us back to this vision of Exodus and Moses. This idea that God was in the very center of all they were, was present and part of it. He wasn't just along for a ride, he was participating in everything. And when they had to go at night, then there was a cloud of fire, and during the day there was a pillar of cloud. When they were hungry, they had manna and quail, and when they were thirsty, they found water and they were provided with water. That's what it means when God tabernacles. There's the reality of the constant and consistent presence of God in the very practicalities of life. He tabernacles with us. He's not merely an observer amongst us. It's part of his very character that he journeys with us in the hope that we will journey with him. In some ways, we can say that very thing of tabernacling goes back to Genesis chapter 3, where God's intention was to walk with Adam in the cool of the night in the garden that was spoilt. Tabernacling was the next way of being able to do it. And now we get to John's Gospel, and here we have the Word became flesh and tabernacled again with us, sharing with us in the life and the living, in the very process of everything we are and everything we do. And God is in the very sight of that. Humanity was sufficient, that God didn't pretend to be human. He came. Humanity is not separated from divinity. We are part of God and God is part of us. If we go back to Genesis and we get the verse that talks about we are made in the image of God, then that tells me that I am the image of God. And then in some ways, if I am his image, he is my image, and I am in him as much as he is in me. We can't separate the desire for God to be part of our humanity. He wants to be so integrated, and he wants that integration to be such that in the lovely picture of Genesis chapter 3 that we have portrayed, we have this idea that God comes to walk with Adam in the cool of the night in the garden. And then as he comes, it also means that he's not waiting for me to go to him. The tragedy is that if he kept on waiting, We're at a state where the world did not recognize him. We already read that last week. So he comes to me. The God of all creation comes to me in order to share with me and tabernacle with me. To be part of my humanity and for me to be part of his humanity. Being human is part of who God is, because my humanity is from him. And he comes full of grace and truth. Now that is such an important thing. You will find that repeated again and again in John's Gospel, the idea of grace and truth. What does it mean? Well, the idea is that if it was just a judicial thing, it would be mercy. Mercy would take a negative deficit and make judgment as if it hadn't happened. And so from being in negative deficit, mercy would give me some kind of parity. But grace goes beyond mercy. It gives me more than I deserve, more than I could ever earn, more than I could ever contemplate. So yes, it would be good if I could have the mercy of God, if he came in mercy and truth. But no, God goes even further. He comes in grace and truth. He isn't just coming so that I am on a playing field. He's coming that I have more. John 10, verse 10, that I have life in all its fullness. That's the aspect of grace. Mercy may give me life and survival and existence. Grace gives me truth, that I am more. I can have fullness and meaningfulness, and I have purpose. And truth, logos, to know that I am part of the essence of everything God has. And my place in it is as a pinnacle of all of that. He comes to me. And in coming to me, he tells me that he loves me. And he tells me of my worth. And in his grace, he offers to lift me up and to give me a sense of my being, to be the person he wants me to be. And I begin to find an answer to the question that Sophia, at the very beginning of our thought this day, couldn't answer. What is the meaning of life? Truth allows me to see beyond circumstance. It allows me to see beyond my fear. The difficulty of many of us in the complexities and challenges of the world is that we live in anxiety and fear. And what that does is it constricts our world. It makes the world about those things that are challenging us. One of the things that truth does is it opens our eyes to see beyond. That yes, right now, things may be not all that we would choose them to be. In our world, in our health, in our work, in our studying, in our family, there may be real difficulties, but the truth is that God is part of it now and will be forevermore. He will not leave us. As Isaiah says, my name is graven on the palm of his hands, that he can never forget me. His desire is to walk with me constantly, to tabernacle with me in those challenges that I have in a complex, changing world where I can never step into the river twice, as Heraclitus told us. And in this complex, changing world, he comes to me knowing that all the light he has to offer, all the hope he has to offer, may be rejected, may be ignored, but he still comes full of grace, and he still comes full of truth. I pray that you will know the God who is full of grace and full of truth, shown in Jesus Christ. That you will know that in the midst of whatever world you're living in right now, in whatever circumstance you're living in right now, that God is tabernacling with you, sharing with you in all that life presents. And if we're having to take journeys of faith and of hope, he is the pillar of fire. If there are times when our soul is starving to have some meaning, then he gives us that which brings meaning and life through Logos. Because he is full of grace and truth to me and to you. And the Word became flesh, came to me and tabernacled with me. I do pray that you know that he can tabernacle with you. God bless you. And from this final session of the prologue of John, let's take a few moments just to bring the thoughts of the verse 14 together. Father God, we come to you just now in the realization that everything you are, everything you said, everything you intended, the Word has become flesh. And not only a flesh, but you have dwelt and are dwelling amongst us. Sometimes we have to accept that we have failed to understand what that means. Your presence and the persistence of your presence in our everyday is something we too easily forget. So remind us day by day, the Word has become flesh and is dwelling amongst us. Amen.